What if some of history's most visionary authors weren't just imagining the future? What if they were revealing it? Or perhaps more unsettling, what if they were helping to design it? Tonight on Midnight Archive, we examine the strange case of literary prophecy from Jules Verne to H.G. Wells to George Orwell and beyond. Were these writers merely brilliant observers of technological momentum, or were they connected, directly or indirectly, to elite intellectual circles that shaped modern civilization? Jules Verne, the architect of tomorrow. When Jules Verne published From the Earth to the Moon in 1865, he described a projectile launched from Florida, a crude lunar mission, weightlessness, a splashdown return. The real Apollo 11 mission launched from Florida in 1969. Coincidence? In 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Verne described the Nautilus, an advanced electric submarine decades before practical submarines were viable. He predicted deep-sea diving suits, electric-powered vessels, global communications networks, skywriting and atmospheric phenomena, but here is what's often overlooked. Verne was deeply connected to elite European intellectual circles. His publisher, Pierre-Jules Hetzel, was politically influential. France in the mid-19th century was a breeding ground for scientific societies, Masonic lodges, and salons where individualist scientists and writers mingled. Was Verne in a secret society? There is no conclusive evidence he was a high-ranking Mason, but the intellectual culture he operated within overlapped heavily with Enlightenment-era Stoic networks. What we do know is this: writers often had access to early scientific theories long before the public did. H.G. Wells, the globalist prophet. Now we move on to H.G. Wells, whose predictions were almost disturbingly precise. He envisioned atomic bombs, the world set free 1914, a League of Nations-style world government, a surveillance society, biological warfare. Unlike Verne, Wells openly advocated for a world state. He was a member of the Fabian Society, a socialist intellectual movement that indicated political elites and reformers in Britain. The Fabian Society was not a secret occult order, but it was influential, its emblem a wolf in sheep's clothing. Wells believed technocratic elites should guide humanity toward a unified global civilization. Is that predictive programming or ideological blueprinting? There is a difference. Predictive programming implies foreknowledge, blueprinting implies advocacy. Wells may not have predicted the future, but he may have argued for it. George Orwell, the reluctant prophet. When George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1949, he described mass surveillance, two-way telescreens, permanent war, psychological manipulation, language engineering, newspeak. We carry surveillance devices in our pockets voluntarily, but Orwell was not predicting technology. He was extrapolating from Stalinist Russia, Nazi Germany, and wartime propaganda. He had witnessed government disinformation, censorship, ideological purges. His prophecy was pattern recognition. Predictive programming. What is it really? The theory of predictive programming suggests elites reveal future plans through fiction to desensitize the population, signal power, avoid karmic consequences in occult interpretations. This idea gained traction in the late 20th century conspiracy culture, but let's approach this academically. There are three possibilities when fiction becomes reality. Convergent evolution. Technology advances logically. Writers extrapolate based on trends. 2. Cultural seeding. Fiction inspires scientists. Engineers who grew up reading Verne and Wells later built rockets and submarines. 3. Elite circulation of ideas. Writers move in intellectual circles where emerging technologies are discussed early. No supernatural foresight required. Were they all in secret societies? This is where we must be precise. Verne, no documented high-level secret order membership. Wells, Fabian Society, openly reformist, not a cult. Orwell, worked for the BBC, anti-totalitarian socialist, not an occult insider. The 19th and early 20th centuries were saturated with Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, occult revival movements, scientific fraternities. But association does not equal conspiracy. Intellectual elites have always formed networks. This is not inherently sinister, it is human nature. The real power of these authors. Here's the more profound idea. They weren't prophets, they were system thinkers. They understood industrial acceleration, political psychology, human weakness, technological momentum. Great authors identify trajectories before society consciously recognizes them. That feels like prophecy, but it is deep pattern analysis. So why does it feel so sinister? Because when fiction becomes real, we experience cognitive shock. When reality mirrors imagination, it feels orchestrated, but often the imagination becomes the blueprint. Scientists at NASA openly cited Verne. Technologists cite Orwell. Futurists cite Wells. The future is built by people who read speculative fiction as children. If I were defending this thesis before a panel, the evidence does not support a coordinated occult cabal directing these authors to reveal future plans. What the evidence does support is this: they were embedded in intellectual ecosystems that anticipated technological and political transformation. The more interesting question is not, were they in secret societies, but rather, are today's science fiction writers shaping tomorrow's reality right now? Because somewhere a 12-year-old is reading a novel, and in 30 years, they will build it. This has been the Midnight Archive, and remember, the truth is always stranger after midnight.